Welcome to ChristiTutionalist Politics podcast, aka CTP, in association with Savage Unfiltered podcast, thelibertybeacon.com, and I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, and that's Lenard. CTP is your no muss, no fuss, just me, you, and occasional guest type podcast. As Graham Norton would say, let's get on with the show! I'm going to start before introducing my guest with a bit of a disclaimer or preface for this episode and why should Christians listen despite the fact that I have a professed atheist on. In a thoughtful way as I can say this, first and foremost, of course, Christians are not supposed to hate anybody, right? And you are not supposed to paint any group of people with a broad brush, whether that be all Christians or all people who use the atheist tag. We are all, as Martin Luther King said, Jr., all individuals and need to be judged on each content of character. So please give this episode a fair hearing, because again, not painting with a broad brush. I know some atheists that I wouldn't want to waste my time of day with being around. But to be fair, I know some fellow Christians that are quite a pain in the butt and no fun to be around either, wouldn't want anything to do with them. So to be fair on that, we're not here to argue, is there a God or isn't there a God? That's not what we're here for. We're here to find some common ground, because if you try to push viewpoints at gunpoint, you just get more resistance. You're never going to get anywhere trying to force something onto someone. So for those willing to give this a fair hearing, welcome to the show, Elizabeth Enton. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And first of all, I will just add to the disclaimer that, and I know it both within atheism, and some atheists are very, very rude. I don't at all disrespect what some people believe. I mean, and that goes across the board with other set beliefs. I think the nature of consciousness, all of that is one of the most complex questions that possibly could be there. So we're going to disagree, and to dislike someone for having a different viewpoint on one of life's biggest mysteries is ridiculous. So there's no need to ever be rude to each other. And again, I've seen atheists be very rude at times as well. So all of us, rude people are rude people,
bad apples in virtually any bunch, right?
Right. And I'll add, I have an interesting take on atheism, because while I don't think there's a God, I do think there's an afterlife. And that is kind of how I even got publicly defining myself as an atheist before, because I grew up in a very secular culture. And so it just was the default setting. It wasn't like, the most outspoken atheists tend to have come from a strong religious belief and then realize that's not what they think, and then are very outspoken about their atheism. So me, it was just the default. And then I started to think, after a personal loss, the passing of my father, is there any way I could think there could be a form of an afterlife? And to me, my cat is sticking his little butt in the camera.
Your beautiful little fur baby wants on camera. Yeah.
He has to say hi. I started to investigate if there was any, what I would consider valid evidence of an afterlife. And I found a lot of scientific evidence that I think shows that we do survive bodily death, but I do not think there's a God. So that's really where I speak about my atheism, and then I have a podcast about it and a book. And rather than, it's not probably the typical, what someone would call typical atheist podcast, in that I'm not discussing atheism as much as trying to reach people who think there's zero chance of an afterlife, who are dealing with heavy grief, and maybe some are terminal themselves. So that's really who I speak to. And, I have had some religious people as well who maybe have had a really profound loss. And, hopefully it just reaffirms for them that someone like me who is an atheist thinks there's an afterlife. So I more speak about my atheism to give people comfort rather than challenge anyone's beliefs.
Right. And for those watching on the video sneak peek at YouTube or Rumble, what's your fur baby's name there?
Well, I will show him to everyone officially. Oh, come on. This is Kiwi. And he's incredibly sweet. And
yeah, my last cat died a few years ago, and I haven't gotten any more new pets. I don't see bringing a kitten in and having the cat outlive me and have to then be rehomed. But anyway, before today officially coming together to discuss these things, I mentioned Penn of Penn and Teller because, again, not all atheists.
Oh, we're not all bad.
Not all atheists hate Christians. And Penn is another wonderful example of he just doesn't believe in God, but he also confides that some biblical tenets are just common sense and part of being a good human, right? You don't have to believe in a God to understand thou shalt not murder. I don't murder you, you don't murder me. I don't have a right to steal your stuff, and as Penn would say, he has no right to steal our stuff, and it would be nice if the government would stop stealing from all of us. So, so there are definitely things we could come together on. Please tell us a little, again, the name of the book and a little bit more about that.
I assume I will say the name of this being a Christian show. I will refer to it as WTF Just Happened to be respectful. And WTF Just Happened is the book. As WTF Just Happened, a sciencey skeptic explores grief, healing, and evidence of an afterlife. And the podcast is WTF Just Happened, all about the afterlife, no woo. And again, to respect, I know some Christians don't really like the F word, so just respect. So people, heads up, I say it out loud in full, both in the book and the podcast. So if that's something you're not comfortable with, I do want to let everyone know.
I understand, but yeah, I generally keep my language pretty clean during the show too.
Right.
But I'm also co-host of Savaged Unfiltered. So
okay.
Yes, we go very unfiltered there.
Yes. I just know the only group who I've offended with that word have been some Christians who I had someone more Christian on, and they wrote in the comments that they didn't appreciate that word. So I mean, I use that word, but I don't. People have a right. If I'm in a group speaking to a culture where that word is not acceptable, which I've never really been around, even the Christians I know, I want to make sure I'm respectful to what people would be comfortable with. So
yeah. I use it as a point of emphasis in sentences on occasion myself. I don't like in my book, Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You, there's a little subsection on language that there are a whole lot of other things. Like I can understand a Christian being upset with taking the Lord's name in vain. But other curse words, they're really just words. And I don't understand why so many indeed get just so upset and bent out of shape. Unless if there are children around, then of course, obviously, we should be mindful and watch our language, right?
Right. And yeah, I guess for me, it depends the culture you grew up in. Growing up, I was secular Jewish, where we celebrated it as a culture, but not religion. My dad, he's the one who passed, he had the filthiest mouth since I was a little kid. So, but, I knew there were like words you don't say when you go to school or other people's homes. But again, growing up in New York City, there weren't the taboos around that word. And I think different cultures have different taboos around certain language, but for me, I don't care what words you say, it's the content and meaning behind them. So are you using a word like just jokingly or pops into your language, or are you putting a sentence structure together to demean other people or hurt people? So it's really what is your heart behind the words you're saying, that I feel. So
Oh, that sounds reasonable.
yeah.
And this is kind of off the beaten path, but since we're talking about afterlife, have you yourself uh, I don't want to use the word spiritual, but had a instance or occurrence of apparitions appearing or anything like that that makes you tend to believe in the afterlife or
Um, I have had those experiences. I wouldn't, I'll share them in a second, but I'm going to just give a disclaimer that that is not what makes me think. And I never use the word believe. I think there's a preponderance of evidence that an afterlife is highly probable. That is based on multiple things. Masses of data and research conducted by places such as the Division of Perceptual Studies that reached I'm stumbling on my words, excuse me. A research center through the University of Virginia, for example. And they have a child psychiatrist who studies cases of children reporting past life memories. They have Dr. Bruce Grayson, who is a traditional psychiatrist, and he studies people who report near-death experiences, which is where they are clinically dead for a percentage of time and are resuscitated through medical means. So that, my own experiences, getting a lot of medium readings, getting to befriend the mediums and the researchers, studying them, and all of that coming together, combined with a few really weird, what I call WTFs that happened to me. I saw my dad once briefly and I jumped. It was early on. I really wish I had stopped and talked to him. I still hadn't really processed his passing, so I can't deny it was brain neurons seeing someone I'm used to, but it felt a little different. I've had some interesting dreams, and I have what are referred to as signs. I don't know if you're familiar with signs from the other side. That's like when people will hypothetically, possibly are ones who've passed, send us signs. And I've had remarkable signs from my dad, and sadly my mentor passed away too. So I had some interesting experiences too. So I'm happy to share any of those.
right. Well, you mentioned previous life experience situations. The Bible itself really does not preclude reincarnation. It doesn't. Most
Oh,
Christians, for whatever reason, automatically just reject that as a notion. But a one soul eternity life can be completely different than that soul spending different times in different bodies on the planet. It's not ruled out. And of course, some other faiths have a big belief in, indeed, the issue of reincarnation.
right. Yeah. I mean, what's interesting, it's interesting you say that about Christianity not precluding it or ruling it out, because materialism, even when I was complete atheist, I mean, I still consider myself atheist, but consciousness, when I thought there was no afterlife, consciousness was created by brain neurons and that was it. Reincarnation was the first thing I thought could be possible. Well, first I was reading about Einstein's theories of time relativity and quantum entanglement. And then the very first thought I had was, well, if consciousness is created by our brain neurons firing, and that has happened once, what is to preclude that from happening again? And maybe it would happen in 10,000 years. I mean, if time could go on eternally, there's big bangs, big crunches, and let's say that happens eternally. Why could another set of brain neurons not create another conscious human that I would get to experience? Not me as Liz, not my father as him. I wouldn't have the same people. It would just be a coincidence of firing brain neurons. That would still be a consciousness that was a me, and no karma, nothing to it. And when your only other thought your whole life is that you're conscious once and then you're permanently obliterated, that was a pretty fantastic option. And I started to Google that, and that's where I found doctors Jim Tucker and the late Dr. Ian Stevenson, who studied cases of kids with past life memories through the University of Virginia. And then from there, that just opened the doors to all this research.
Yeah, and I haven't had enough sleep, so my brain and mouth aren't cooperating either. So back after this recording, I'm probably going to go lay down and take a nap. But
Oh, good.
yeah, now I remember the train's back on the track. And then it's gone again. Not reincarnation, but science, the science issue. Plenty of doctors and studies have indeed dealt with the out-of-body experience people who've had of, like being in surgery and have flatlined and observed their own resuscitation. So again, you don't have to be spiritual or believe in a faith or even a God to understand. Indeed, there is scientific evidence, if you want to call it that, or at least scientific theory behind the concept that yes, there is something more than just this current physical existence we have. And that's kind of what you're talking about, is without the belief in God, still believing in an afterlife, because there seems to be a whole lot more and more science agreeing with that.
Definitely. Yeah. And I just don't think a God is necessary. All it really seems to be, well, first of all, there's a bunch of just data, evidence, personal experiences that the survival of consciousness is the most likely. I don't think a God is necessary for that. I haven't seen evidence of a God. I see evidence, no problem. I just have never ever seen it. It seems like a huge jump. And why, again, with no disrespect, this is just how I think things. I don't look down on anyone who'd think otherwise, but like, why a Judeo-Christian God over a Zeus? I mean, it's all like, why? Who was it? I forget someone. It could have been Ricky Gervais to Stephen Colbert, but I could be wrong. He said to him, because Stephen Colbert is a Catholic and believes very much in God, and Ricky Gervais is an atheist. And Ricky Gervais said, well, think of all the gods you don't believe in. I just don't believe in one more. So, I mean, and that's kind of, a God is absolutely not necessary to how the world works and to survival of consciousness. And if consciousness is non-local and quantum entangles with our brains the same way the cloud downloads to our phones and to our laptops. So yeah, it just seems like a complete jump and a complete kind of trying to put things together the way, ancient Greece put together Zeus and Athena. And I don't know enough about the ancient Greek or Roman gods to properly comment on that. I just know the very basics going way back to fifth grade. But
each throughout time all seem to have even non-monotheistic God, I can't talk either.
I know, both of us. I feel like I'm stumbling over my words too.
Tend to have a creator God and other gods, whereas monotheism, it's all those things of control over nature and whatever else are the one. But what made you decide did the book come first or your show?
Book was being written first, way before my show. My show started over quarantine, and I just thought I love to sit and ask all these people questions. Suddenly, everyone and their mother was putting out a podcast, and they weren't so good. They weren't so professional. You heard the sirens. So I was like, okay, the standard has gone down. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have a professional studio or editor. Let me do this. And I had time to learn to edit. So I just did it. And I thought, I'll do this little project on the side and maybe it'll help promote my book. But it ended up getting a following, and I've ended up loving it and getting to sit and talk to people I just dream of talking to, and held captive and getting to answer my questions for 2 hours or an hour. So these are people I just want to sit and hound with all these questions about topics I find fascinating. So the podcast launched first, book was planned and written way before that, but the book didn't publish until after the podcast.
But they kind of correlate or correspond with each other for the most part.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Ed Bondarenka, and I host Your American Heritage on Saturdays at 2 in the afternoon on this station. Your American Heritage is a show about the struggle we find ourselves in and how to react to it in the light of our biblical and American heritage. Listen to it while you're working around the house, the garage, cleaning the guns, walking the dog, driving, or just lazing around. Join me at 2 o'clock Saturdays here on Wham Radio, 1600 AM, 92.7 FM.
God bless America.
Pretty much the book is my story, and part 2 is coming out soon. The book is from 2015 when my dad first got sick and it was clear he was going to be in hospice, all the way through around mid 2018, the first batch of research I did, thinking there is zero chance of an afterlife, to thinking afterlife's highly probable. The people I met, it's my personal story while I share what I'm learning, who I met. And then my next book is going to be from 2018 through like the start of 2021, because I've just gathered more evidence, deeper friendships and relationships with the people along the way, more friendships, more just WTFs that have added to my experience.
Yeah, I think I asked, I don't remember though, if I've gotten links from you to your book page or to your podcast. So let people know the show name again and where you're hosted out of, which server, because that's always the best place to hear a podcast. But no doubt it's carried by iHeart and Spotify and all them.
It's everywhere, and it's WTF Just Happened, all about the afterlife, no woo. And my website is WTFJustHappened.net, and you can link to my book, and you can link to all the places you can listen to my podcast. It's on every app, hosted officially through Spotify.
Okay, yes. I want to make sure I get your website in the show notes. So
thank you. I'll email it to you too. I think I did,
yes,
but
that would
I'll
be
send
great. And there's the book on Amazon only. Is there Kindle? Is there an Apple Nook, Barnes and Noble Nook version, Apple Books version? All those
right
just
now it's just on Amazon and Kindle, but I'm looking to get it onto Nook and Apple, and I've got to get to that. Yeah, they'll be soon.
Yeah, I use Smashwords to get my books onto other sites, but unfortunately Smashwords has been gobbled up by some other company, so it's not as easy and convenient for you to then use them. But you can check them out, that you can get your book up to them, who will then get it onto Barnes and Nobles and Apple Books for you. Or there's also ebooklaunch.com. You could take your manuscript and go through them without a whole lot of hassle or expense to have them put it on. Because yes, even though 80% of all books these days are sold by Amazon, we of course don't want to limit our options or our audience's options to be able to get their hands on our product.
Yes, that's definitely true. Yeah, I have been wanting to get it to others. Sorry, there's Pickles now saying hello. So Pickles is Kiwi's brother. So yeah, I'm sorry. Well, I guess I can email you to send me the links to both those places, because I do want it everywhere. So Pickles agrees. He's really jumping in and giving his thoughts on this, and he's thanking you. So
we just get to hear him, though. We don't get to see him.
You can see him too if you'd like. Pickles, come here. Pickles, come here. Come here, Pickles. Everyone wants to meet you. This is Pickles.
Oh, there we go. Hi, Pickles. What platform, again, back to the show, are you housed on? Buzzsprout, Spotify?
Spotify. But yeah, you can hear it equally on any app or YouTube or, Apple, all of the apps.
Right. Once you get your show, you put your RS feed on the other platforms, whereas like this show is housed at Buzzsprout, but yeah, it's available on 14 different podcast platforms. I don't usually do a very long show because I'm still technically in my first season. And I figure if I go really long, it reduces the chances of someone taking, an interest in a new show if I go 3 hours. So I try to keep my time down to 20, 30 minutes, and we are 20 minutes in, but I don't want to short shift or thrift you either. Is there anything else that you would want to share?
I guess just since I'm speaking to a Christian audience, I know there are some Christians who've also had really tremendous, horrible losses who still find some of this research helpful because it just backs up what you're thinking. And hopefully it also gives you comfort that the evidence is so strong that even an atheist has been convinced by it. So any of you in deep grief, I hope that adds to, some, however you seek your comfort.
Okay. Well, thank you, Elizabeth Enton. And one last time, let's mention the book title. And
Yes. Book WTF Just Happened. A Sciencey Skeptic Explores Grief, Healing, and Evidence of an Afterlife. And the podcast WTF Just Happened, all about the afterlife, no woo. So
all right. Thank you again for joining. I really appreciated you having us. I hope everyone stayed tuned in and gave the show and you a fair hearing. Because again, I know some that I'll get some nasty grams, right?
Oh.
Why in the world am I got an atheist on a Christian show? We have to live and exist with each other on this planet, and giving you a common courtesy to discuss common ground we have, I think is fair, and I hope others feel the same way and tuned in. So thank you again for coming.
Thank you so much.
Like and subscribe to ChristiTutionalist Politics podcast and Savage Unfiltered. Maybe even go back a few years and dig up some old The Patriot angles. Share episodes. We need your help to grow the show. Thank you for having tuned into ChristiTutionalist Politics show. If you haven't already, please check out my primary internationally available book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you. Available anywhere books are sold, or autographed copies are available online direct from me via terrorstrikes.info/shop. And you can obviously learn more about the very non-traditional or fluffy style Christian book, but a Christian book nonetheless. Also, please tune into Savage Unfiltered podcast, of which I am a co-host, and be sure to check out more about today's discussion at thelibertybeacon.com, where my articles drop every Saturday. In addition to seeing the corresponding thelibertybeacon.com piece referenced in any episode of ChristiTutionalist Podcast, see to the show transcript on podcast platforms that provide access to it, like Buzzsprout at tinyurl.com/ChristiTutionalist for additional bonus material there in the transcript. Thank you. Take care. God bless.
It is a myth that terrorism stopped during COVID. Unfortunately, mainstream media opted to prioritize pandemic hysteria over promoting all news. Terrorism continues. Simply hoping that it doesn't affect you is not a strategy. The new book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you, featured on The Author Show, is now available in paperback from bookstores, online, or as an ebook exclusively through Amazon Kindle. Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you by Joseph M. Leonard. Order today.